We're going to go ahead and get started. I got 4 o'clock on the dot. This is a free demo. Obviously, I can yak about whatever I want because nobody can complain about the price. So I can also talk about Wood Carving Academy. If you're not a member of Wood Carving Academy, this is the type of videos that you get to see. Like I was saying, if you don't have Wood Carving Academy, you need to join up for Wood Carving Academy. A totally random self-serving plug. Also, my website, dgosnellwoodcarving.com, or just Google my name. I have 200 roughouts on there, and I also teach a class monthly on there. It's $20, $20 per month, and we do projects not unlike we're about to do this afternoon. Again, this was an impromptu, quick little go. I don't know if there's going to be 20 people on here or the max amount that Zoom will allow in, but we'll see how it goes along, and hopefully you can learn some tips, tricks along the way. And if you don't like it, it is it's just not your cup of tea, because what's not to like about a month? I'm just kidding. Let me get this out of the way. Hopefully everybody's seen that long enough to copy that down, or maybe everybody's there. This is a pattern that I have done that was started out as a doodle. In the next couple of days on Facebook, I will post a link back out, or just a drawing of this pattern. But I want to show you what this looks like, and this is going to give you a good tilt and turn of the head. So this head is tilted as you look at it. It's bent over to an angle, and it's turned. One of the things I want to talk about is when doing the pattern. Of course, you'll have a pattern, but I want to give you the importance of a blockhead versus trying to get that nose. So if we're looking at something like this, a lot of people's focus is they will come around and try to draw a pattern or whatever, and they try to go around the back side of this nose and everything else. Well, what that does is it really limits you. Even if, let's say, this was a 90-degree, and people try to focus, and I'm just kind of imitating, drawing around on your screen there. We try to go around these noses and mouths and nostrils, when all we need in most cases is straight lines. If we do the straight lines or the blockhead, which is primarily square, we have a lot more freedom to raise noses, eyebrows. We could play with a lot of other aspects. And not only this, we could change and take this same pattern, and we could move it. We could move the nose over this way by eliminating this front line, bringing it back, so on and so forth. Again, since this is tilted and turned and cocked up in the air, all right, and like so, that neck is way, or the head is way forward of the shoulders, which is where we want our neck to be. This one actually is not correct in the anatomy aspect, because believe it or not, the back of your ears should be forward of the front of the shoulder, unless you're really hunched forward or something like that. So what we're trying to eliminate in some of these carvings like this with that big head forward is we're trying to eliminate, and I'll show you mine, for example. We're trying to eliminate that head that's stacked right on top of the shoulders. We want to push that head forward. Well, I know as well as anybody else does that sometimes if we push that head forward, we now have a 3 or 4 inch block in a very small carving. And I know that that costs money for what you're getting out of it. But if you're wanting to add a lot more for your buck, so to speak, is we've got to get those heads pushed forward. So what I've been doing recently, and when I say recently, in the last couple of years, is I've been turning the head one way or the other, which brings a little bit of that wood back in play, so you don't have to use cost for that head being way forward, if that makes sense. Anyway, this is what the pattern looks like when it's cut out. And I've done some couple little tabs here. That's going to be the first thing that we remove. And then it looks like this is not a center line, by the way. Our nose is going to be on this point right here. And the big challenge that I have found when I started turning these heads and moving these heads is getting all this stuff back into line as to where it's supposed to be, because there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. Primarily, if you look at the front, we have to have that head in there. And a lot of us lose track of this stuff here. We take it off at a different angle, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of explaining all this stuff to you, we're going to jump straight into it. Safety first, as it's behind me here, just to talk about some of the tools that we're going to use today. Nothing major. Knife of your favorite choice. And if I tell you it's a number 9 in a certain size, don't get hung up in thinking that you've got to go out and buy that tool, or it has to be. So we're going to use obviously some number 7s, some number 9s, some soft V's, and about every V tool that we have, just because I get bored with using the same tool for more than 4 or 5 minutes. So let's get our carving glove and our little safe. Give me about 30 seconds to drink a drink of Dr. Pepper, and we're going to start hacking away on this thing. Those of you who don't know me know, are wondering about this. I hold my tools funny. So I do this, and I usually have a guard on this finger too, but a lot of times I use my pinky as a break, so to speak. So if I'm coming here, I'm using that pinky as a break. And if I'm getting up in a corner somewhere, I'll wear my pinky out. It's going to get to the point where I'm going to have to wear a glove on both hands, because I do hold my tools unique or weird. You can go ahead and call it weird, but that's the reason for the pinky guard there, so I don't slosh my hands on wood. So this is the front of our cut by, I don't know where my tape measure is. It's a 2x2 by, let's call it 6 inches, right? It's 6 1/8. But if you've ordered that 6 or that 2x2 by 12 from the big box store, right, we can always shorten that book up and get 2 of these out of the same carving. That was just an oversight on my part. I'll draw the pattern that I'll post later on Facebook on as a 6-inch piece. So this is the front stuff out of frame there. Let me move it a little bit more. There we go. That's more better. All right. So that's the front. As we stop wiggling. Okay. So from looking at the front of your carving, there's 2 little wings on either side. So we follow this line and this line down, and we want to chop those off. When I'm coming to power through anything, so I take a lot of little cuts instead of 1 or 2 big cuts. So if I come down there, and I can just pop that off very easily instead of trying to manhandle that big chunk of wood. Same way here, probably come at it from this angle because my knife blade won't get hung up on anything. So when we're making these cuts, it's not about how strong we are, it's about how we get away wood. So now that we've got, we could straighten this head back up, we could put something over here. Don't get hung up on everything has to be a certain way. But being that we are tilting it this way, and he's looking over this way, we're going to use that front corner. So I just guesstimate, and I'm honestly telling you, I guesstimate. So we're going to come back about right there to give us a little bit of ear. That's going to be the side of one of his ears. Now, if you look where I drew this, if you look from here to here and here to here, I've went too far back. So I need to just readjust that line just a little bit. And I'm going to pop it about right there and come down. and I'm just kind of freehanding that because I want the nose and the back of the head to flare slightly outward. That's going to give me a little bit of ear in there. Okay. Now, the problem you're going to have with cutting this wood at an angle is the wood grain running up and down. One side is going to cut really good up and down, like so. And we're just going to go ahead and pop through these. And yes, I am using a real thin blade. So let me switch over to a bigger blade so I can take a bigger bite out of there. All right, so I'm going to come here and make sure I'm in the screen there. And we just want to knock some of those out. The reason I got a thicker blade is I'm heavy-handed and I have some bad habits in knife work. So if I start off with a small thin blade, the chances of me breaking it are a lot more. Now, again, those carved upward, no big deal, nice clean cuts. Now, when we're coming over here, because that wood grain is running downward, if we cut up, and I'm going to show you here, it's going to break, right? So if we're heavy-handed there, it's going to break. So this one wants to carve down. Now, what I didn't show some of you is I have a backdrop on the back of this. So I can sneak my feet right in there and still be in focus, and I can push against that carving, which is holding on that backdrop, okay? So if you don't have one of those little deals, it doesn't take much to make one. You can get a scrap of plywood. It doesn't have to be fancy or anything. It just has to serve a purpose. And what I mean by that is I can also come in here with that tool that everybody has, that big old rascal that we bought somewhere, and we can really push now, and we can get those gone. Now, I'm probably going to be wiggling the screen a little bit because I'm pushing up against the table here. All right, so what I'm saying is when I'm telling you I'm using this tool or that tool, just understand that use whatever tool you have that works. If I'm cutting this big stuff and we know that this is probably without video purposes going to be held in our lap or something, right? So use those tools however you see fit. Now, if I'm holding this in my lap up against my chest and I'm doing this with a knife, right? There's not a whole lot of power I can get from there. But yeah, I can do this and get a whole lot of power. But like we talked about the wood grain, change your tool up. Even though you're making a flat cut, I can use this gouge in here, even in my hand with no support behind it, a lot better than I can come in there with a knife. Now, people say, well, I don't have the hand strength for this and the hand strength for that. Sometimes it's about carving versus the tool that you have. So whenever that comes together like that, I'll just leave it. I don't want any hard lines or transitions in there just yet. So that is the two sides. On the back, you're just going to have to take a couple test cuts. And I don't know if y'all seen that. I barely put the knife in there and you've seen that it split all the way up to the angle. So this one again is carving downward. Now I've got the feet pushed into the table there. So we're just going to go down this way. And we're just going to cut a couple there. So wood grain is always that little teenager that shows up whenever and causes havoc, right? I can say that because I got two of them. Now, because the pattern is cut from a 90 and a 90, and we're now trying to box it in here, you see this angle that we made here, right through there? We want to mimic that same angle back through here. So if we take that straight line and we just come around, you see how it's a straight line? Now we come right here and just make a straight line. So you see how we're connecting that one? And it's going to go up to, you see how it's right here at this point? It's going to go back to this point. So in other words, right through there and take that angle off. And again, this is somewhat in grain, so just take your time. Now, it doesn't matter what you do or how you cut it. As long as you start off with something that's somewhat symmetrical, that's all that matters, because your face is not really symmetrical at all. But we want to start that face somewhat being even. Like so. So now what we want to do is we want to come in from each side and find out which shoulder. One shoulder looks higher. Let me get it at the angle. One shoulder, if you're moving your head, and y'all can all do this as you're doing it, if you're moving your head one way or the other, the shoulders drop one way or the other. So if you're kind of matters, I don't get hung up on symmetry a lot, but if we adjust this to making this shoulder that we're going to, right, it's going to come back a little bit. So in other words, if he's turning his head this way, this shoulder is going to come back a little bit. It's very stiff if you hold your shoulder straight. If you don't believe me, sit back in a chair and then turn your head one way, and you'll feel it touching. So when I'm coming up with the arms, and I'm just going to measure it from here. Now we know that somewhere in here there's going to be the back of his little hoodie, that we're going to call it. So I'm going to come in here and just go about 1/4 of an inch like so. And I'm going to say that's the back of that arm. Now when I come over here, I'm going to come back. So see how we went from here to here? It's not much, but it's just enough to give it a little bit more in your carving. Now, we want one of these hands to go down and one of these hands to go up. It doesn't matter which one it is. So if we take this and we follow this here, and let's say we just want to have this hand come down into here, leave a little bit more for fabric or whatever it may be. So maybe his fabric is folding over this way. And let's say this arm comes straight in now and then back up. And then this will be his hand over here. All right. So you see how the fabric's going to fold way down. And then we can always make it smaller. We can't make it thicker. So I'm going to add a little bit more there. So let's say we want this arm to just, let's say we're going to use all of this. If that's his hand here, let's come way up here with this guy's hand. So let's come up into there somewhere. Again, this is all guesstimation. So if I have about yay much fabric there, I'm going to put yay much fabric here. I'm going to come here, and then this one I want to drop way down, and then his hand is going to come into here somewhere, right in there. So we're going to use part of that as his hand. Part of that's not going to be his hand, like so. So now what I do when I'm establishing arms and stuff like that, let's say this hand is going to be about right there, and that hand is going to be about that big. All right, I'm just guesstimating. So this hand's going to be about that big, and I'll just draw that out. Or we can take our eraser and just erase it off. All right, don't break your knife when you're doing it. So when I'm adjusting all this stuff, I'm just guessing. I'm just playing around with big square shapes. I'm not trying to get any form or function. I just want my big square shapes. What I do want is I want to figure out where my hips are. And if my legs are this wide, my hips are a little bit, but that's a good rule of thumb. Don't get too crazy. So that's about how thick I want my arms, somewhere right in there. So now all of this to this is just a quick removal. And again, it don't have to be inward just yet. We just want to remove that corner. We want to remove that corner, and that gets me the front of my arm and where my torso is going. Same way here, but because we're getting in some sort of hoodie, right? This is going to be somewhat rounded here. And again, we can't add wood back. So we want to take what we need or save what we can right now. And then this with wood grain, we can knock that whole corner off all the way down. Don't pop off your book. And that don't even have to be a book down there. It can be whatever you want. But you see how we're just establishing the big corners on here. And then underneath that arm, we're just going to knock off a big corner, or not arm, that hand. And we're going to knock off a big corner under this hand right here. Now all that stuff gets in the knife blade breaking area, right? You can break it all the way across. You could come here and put stop cuts and relief cuts, but I believe in the joy of laziness, and we've spent thousands, if not hundreds of dollars on all these gouges. But when we go to a wood carving show or we go take a class or something like that, we always want to try to dig and use that knife in everything we do. And that's okay. If you're a great knife wielder, use that knife. But if you're one of those guys who has a bunch of tools already, use them. That's why you bought them in the first place, because you looked at it at a magazine or in your buddy's box, or you seen somebody else using it and you thought, man, that'd be great. But then we tend to just want to use a couple other tools or very few tools when we're carving in a group. I've seen it over and over and over, and I never understand it. Again, I'm just knocking out big shapes around those hands. So now we have the inside cut with that angle. We went to that edge and we went to that edge there. All you have to now do is come in here and start scooping up to that edge, either with this number 9, a soft V, doesn't matter. So now you have two separate transactions, not transactions, angles. I make up words, by the way, if you've never had a class with me before. There's things called tickle cuts, etc. Just go with the flow, have fun. Now, if you look in just a few short minutes, we've got the front of these arms blocked in, boxed in, whatever your method of understanding is. We're going to do the same thing on the back side of this. You can use a soft V, which is, I have one here somewhere. We're going to come in here. Just make sure if you're using a bladed tool that's long instead of that number 9, we don't want the blade to be down here, because again, that's going to take away fabric or wood. So make sure that blade is going downward or into your carving. Right? So now it's a transition and not a wedge in there. Now, if you're needing that wedge for whatever reason, by all means, use it. But you also want to use it in your advantage. More often than not, we get into a habit of just carving in a cornrow pattern when we're using V tools and things. We want to always be aware of where that blade is, especially if you're using my favorite tool, which is a 90-degree V tool. A lot of times I'll take these when I'm trying to make a layer, and I'll come up with a 90-degree V tool, but you see how that blade is straight up and down right here? Same way here, if we're coming in there, you want to make sure that blade is up. Now this is no different than the number 9 I just used. It's just a deeper cut now. Same way here, I want to keep as much of that hoodie, whatever, cloak, hood, whatever it's called, right? And then we're going to come this way and just making sure that that angle is into the wood. This one's giving me some sort of weird grain direction in there, so we're just going to sneak back up this way. And I want a little flare out here, but it's also got to be round. All right, so right now we're just getting boxy type stuff in. There's no what I would call major shaping, but it kind of comes into play on its own if you box this stuff in. Again, there's people that say boxing, blocking in. In my opinion, it's all the same thing. We're just getting those big shapes. Here, we're going to go around that cloak or hoodie, whatever it's called. And you see how I'm going to lay this over and it starts taking all this underneath that, which now gives me thickness into this. So we're just going to knock off these corners, right like so, all the way around. So now we got to round the back of this. We've got to start rounding the front of this. But if we want that fabric below that hand, that fabric's going to come back up in this way, right? And then this fabric, we don't need it to go down that far. So let's just measure it from there to there. So the tip of that's going to be about right like so. We don't need to go way down here like I had it. All right. So let's just say that's the end of it right there. And it's going to come back up into this way. Now, the main thing you want is, because this hand is going to be higher than this one, we don't want these even. We want this one to be noticeably higher. So I'm going to bring it up just a fuzz more. And I think I probably had it. I just missed my mark on the line. Right like so. And I'm just going to come in and just start tickling or curving right around that, like so. Right around this, like so. And then just connect those two. And I'm using the blade down here to start rolling or curving the fabric. You see how we just curved it around? Get my pencil out of the way down here, it's hiding. I already have 4 pencils out and 2 tools. But there's the big rumor going around that says I don't like pencils. I like them. I just don't like using them everywhere. Because even this stuff right here, we don't need that pencil line on there anymore. So we need to take that off, because if we leave these pencil lines on after we're done with them, we just wanted to use these as shapes, right? We now have a big shape with a knife in there that says we don't need that shape anymore, or we don't need that pencil line anymore. If we leave those pencil lines on, the only place they have to go is into our carving gloves and then back over something that we've already cleaned off. Back on the other end here, I'm going to use this bottom blade. I'm going to go around his big sleeve down there, but I'm using that blade to curve the bottom of this robe or cloak or whatever it's called. I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of robe. Now on the back, I don't need to use some sort of fancy blade. I got plenty of wood down here that I can cut on. So I'm just going to peel it around like a potato. Notice I'm not trying to get all this. I'm just honestly just trying to get a good edge down here on the bottom. Everything else can transition into that. You see we have some separations here. We've got the bottom of the robe because it was cut on the 90. Just connect those two. Nothing major. Now we have one row of rope or robe. And now we're just going to curve that robe around. A little bit more transition there. That looks good. A little bit right there. Now, all of this, we can assume where his booty is, there's going to be a butt up in here. So we want it to come off of it. I did a little scoop right here on the thing, but I'm thinking we need to go up a little higher for his butt, which is about right in there. And again, if you want his butt lower, it's not a problem. I'm just going to come into here and now start scooping all of that down. And it doesn't have to be much. We're just going to come in and just pull those down. I got a high spot right there now. So we're just going to take all that and smooth it out, continuing the roundness. Now, all of this, we can take some big chunks out of this because A, it's with the grain, so they're going to come out relatively easy, but also make sure that we don't have a finger or something in there pinched to where that knife is going to get rid of flesh instead of wood. And again, these are big cuts. Another little thing that I didn't say, anytime I'm cutting something like up in here, I want to cut away from that. I don't never want to cut with that stop cut and try to transition it back under it. Because again, these are only meant to be rough cuts. These are big shapes. They are not detail stuff. If you trust the process of the big shapes, the detail comes in a lot quicker. However, our brain tells us that we want to see details and we want to see finished stuff really, really quick. And that's what gets us into trouble sometimes is we start doing detail and then have to come in and make some big bold cuts and then we get rid of our detail. So you're carving 2 or 3 times in the same carving. I'm just chasing pencil lines here. It's all I'm chasing. And that one was an actual marker. It's not going to come off, but there's no sense in us having it. So we're just going to get rid of all of these marker lines because now we can change the center point of his nose. We can change anything we want. But if you have those center lines on there, you're only going to go where you are telling yourself to go. Once I get a face in this direction, I don't try to establish any sort of nose or anything like that because I want it to be free flowy, so to speak. I want to play with it. I want to have fun. I want to change the transition right here and just chase off my machine mark right through there. I'm just going to get to where I can until it starts digging. And then you take your flat-ish rounder tool off. This one happens to be a number 7. We can go right through there and get it nice and clean. I'm not looking for any sort of inward or outward cuts, anything like that. So there, same way with the number 7, we're just going to come across the chest and torso, and we're going to take that and knock off those corners back into those arms. You see how we're not digging after the arm yet? Let's save that. It will, I promise you, it will pop in there if we don't go digging for it. Right like so. Let's take the soft V and just tickle a couple of these out of the way. And the reason I took the soft V instead of a big V or a knife is it gives you a smoother transition in there that you can add something or do something with later. Let's go ahead and just come at the bottom of this hand right here with the soft V and just about a 1/16 of an inch deep right in here, just to give us a line that we don't need a pencil line for anymore. Again, not deep. Same way here, just enough to let us get rid of that pencil line. And then we want to come across the bottom of that hand, right like so. Now that hand looks bigger than that one because we're going to manipulate that by adding some wood. And the way you add some wood is you take some away in the opposite direction. And that'll add us a little bit of wood right in here. Again, nothing more than removing the bandsaw lines. That's all we're chasing right here. And I'm just going to knock off a big corner of the original corner of the wood. Same way right here, we're going to knock off that big corner. And what that's going to do is it's going to start tucking that hand into that cloak. Now, we don't know how much hand is exposed or how little hand is exposed, but in my brain, it's telling me that this hand right here is smaller than this hand right here because of the scoop I've got right there. Now, if we follow that scoop, we are absolutely going to mess up. But if you trust your math, and our math is very complicated, we're just going to take a little line like this and a little line like that and say, there's the top of that hand, and just put that scoop a little further down. Or you can come in here with your soft V and come back from this way. Don't go all the way to the torso because we still need to leave some thumb over there. You see how that thumb now, let it focus in there, will pop in there. So knock it on the corner of the top of the hand, back to the torso, and then above the torso, let it stop pixelating there. I think my gloves are making some weird stuff on that gray. All right. So here, all we have to do is come out of the cloak and go up a little bit. And this is what I mean by adding a little bit of wood. We just went a little further into the torso here. And now we've got the transition that this one's higher and then this one's lower. like so. Since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and soft V into that arm one more again. And we're going to come into the curvature of that arm. And I'm going to take a number 7 and just clean up all of my trash. So I'm going to come in here and just blend from one to the other. I still want the cut marks in there. I don't want it super smooth. But we're going to get like that. So let me get this. I'm seeing that glove is acting weird. It's pixelating on my screen when I put the glove in there. I don't know if it's the color or the pattern in the glove. It's trying to focus. There's fabric pattern in here, and it looks like it's acting weird trying to focus on those instead of carving. However, we don't want to carve without the glove. So there it is, roughed out. All right, so let's come over here and find out where we want a nose and where we want the head. Now, the big focal point, in my opinion, on this guy is this hairline, right? So with that hairline being a big focal point, we want to drop that nose down as far as we can. Since there's not a big toothy grin or something like that, we don't need a lot of mouth. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to come way down here with my nose. And I'm going to go ahead and draw that. If I'm looking at that and I think about a 90-degree angle, so from here to here, 90 degrees, and from here to here, 90 degrees. All right. Now, if you can't imagine that, you take one of my favorite tools, which is a Post-it note, and this one happens to have salty on it because I was trying to figure something else out when I was drawing something for a pirate. But anyway, waste not, want not. So fold one of these guys at a 90-degree angle. So that's corner to corner. Or actually, let's get us a little bit, yeah, corner to corner. If I can get this in there. And it don't have to be perfect. We just want to get it close like that. So now if you take this and you open it up and you lay it, well, we could actually cheat and use the sticky part. And if you lay it on your carving, right, you now have a 90-degree reference from your face if you don't smash it like I just did. All right, and if you look on this side, I was off by about a 32nd of an inch. So again, Post-it note, what can help you? So let's say the top of my eyebrow is going to be here. All right, anywhere, wherever you put it is where it's correct, because we are caricature carvers. As long as you don't have an ear under the nose, everything should come out and be good. Get it close. I'm not a big anatomy guy. As long as it's close and not crazy, it should work out. Now, if you look at that, we have two parallel-ish lines, and I'm not going to get too hung up on which one is what way. All right. He kind of looks like one of those stormtroopers from Star Wars now. So if you wanted to carve you a stormtrooper with a Obi-Wan Kenobi cape on it, then that's exactly where you start right here. So I've done give you another option, right? Or he could be and again, I'm not trying to be funny when I say this. This is exactly how my brain operates and how I come up with new type stuff. If I look at something and I see something, yes, we absolutely said we're carving a monk today. However, if I was here by myself and I'm looking at these lines, these lines are for you guys. I normally just wing it a lot of times. And some of it works out and some of it doesn't. But how funny could it be if we put a knight's iron mask on this guy? You see what I'm saying? With a robe. And then you take one of these hands and you put a javelin that's, 7 inches long up through here. Now, I'm not saying that that's what we're going to do. We're going to carve a monk. But what I'm telling you is there are two types of carvers. There's systematic carvers who start a project and they address the nose the same way, the eyes the same way, the arms, et cetera, et cetera. And those guys turn out very nice stuff. And then you have what you call fluid carvers, who just goes where the carving takes you. I cannot tell you how many pirates I have carved from cowboys because I broke a hat. I can't tell you how many hobos I've carved from Santas because something went south. Never give up on a carving, and always be willing to look at what you have and what can you have versus where you started. I'm going to tell you, some of the best carving doodles that I've ever done in my entire life is because something like we just talked about sparked an interest, and I went in a different direction. Because trust me now when I tell you this with 100% conviction, if your heart is in it and you go, oh, that would be cool, you're going to have a better carving than, well, next I have to do this because I'm going to do that. You see what I'm saying? You're putting all those pieces in a row. So I'm telling you guys, I'm seeing this and I'm going, man, that would be so funny if this guy, you know, turned into some sort of, what's that show, A Knight's Tale or something, where he's having to sneak around and be a knight or something. But anyway, enough babbling. So what I'm telling you is, don't be afraid to see something else within your carving. If you see something else in the carving you have, I can tell you without conviction, I have abandoned thousands of ideas and went in a different direction and got a better carving than I wanted to carve. Everybody that's watching and everybody that will ever see this video later or have a class with me, nobody here gets carver's block. I know everybody just has millions of ideas and they carve them all. And I'm being sarcastic when I say that. So what I'm saying is, when you're telling yourself to do something because, hey, it's fun or we've got a demo, and you get to a point where it can go a different direction and you like that different direction, go in that different direction because you're going to have fun doing it. Now, this is the bottom or the tip of the nose. Everything on the nose, no matter what nose you have, I'll give you a couple examples here just to bore you to death. No matter what nose you have, everything carves away from the nose. So whether you have a small nose like this, right, everything carves away from the nose. I try to not carve anything into the nose when I'm forming the nose. Now you're going to say, well, Dwayne, what about the nostrils? But if you look, you see how the tip of that nose, it goes away. I didn't carve into the nose. Okay. Same way here. This guy has no nose and he's pouting because somebody took his prune juice at the in line at the old retirement home or whatever. Right. So, but if you look, everything goes away from the nose. Now there's carvers who's going to say, go here and do that. And that's okay. I'm not telling you mine is the only way. It's another way. Now, the prime reason I say go away from the nose is now when we come in here with that small gouge, right? And we carve that nostril, we can carve inward. But if we carve inward on the shaping the nose, we then have to do this to carve that nostril. And there's not a lot of wood up here. And I'm going to tell you, if you're doing that, you have broke a nostril off. So that's the way I've came up with eliminating breaking my nostrils off, is I carve the bottom of the nose slightly downward. So back to the nose. We're not going to come straight in. We're going to come down. So we're going to come down just like so, away from the nose. Now the nose can be as narrow or as big as you want it. I have a big nose in person, all right? So I tend to carve big, fat, meaty noses because that's what I get to look at, is a big, fat nose. I was born with it, can't help it, so I exaggerated on my carvings, right? So now when we look at that, we've pulled that chin down in there. Now this is going to be the top of the eyebrow and or whatever it wants to be, okay? So I'm going to carve from the tip of the nose, and I'm going to start scooping downward. And I'm going to start checking it until I start seeing a little profile come up. something maybe a little more like so. Now, because I was scooping and my knife, for whatever reason, in this video is sharper than it is, it kind of came back out. So we just want to take a little bit of that off. All right. So now it points the profile a little bit better. So that's half the profile that I want. I'm going to get the rest of the profile by coming into here and scooping up just on that corner. And may as well go ahead and get the rest of the bandsaw mark there and the rest of the bandsaw mark there. So now we got a better profile coming in, but focus on the bottom of that nose. You see how it's cutting slightly downward? I even came off of my line there. You're not carving in. Let's go ahead and get the rest of this machine mark off and the rest of this machine mark off here. So now we can focus on just the nose. Being we're here, may as well get rid of that ugly machine mark right through there. All right. So now what I want to do is, do I want this to have a flat, blunt nose on the bottom? Do I want it to kick up on the side? It doesn't matter. It's all up to you. So let's draw some lines on here first and foremost. I'm going to take my finger and slide it like this. I'm going to come over here to this side of the nose. I'm just going to put me a little dot or a little line. I'm not going to move my finger. If I come on this cheek now and slide it down, see, if you come here and just move it, you see how much you're going to be off. But again, if you slide it down just like you did on the other side, you then have a nose that should be pushed back the same distance. I cannot tell you how many times I've come in here from the side of the face and marked it and then done something over here and then the side of my face, or my nose was already pushed in one direction or the other. So come from the nose or the face right here. The other thing, if you're doing it from the nose, which a lot of us do, all right, let me show you something. You see the tip of my finger is on that nose? Well, watch what happens when I push the tip of my finger in. The tip of your finger is meaty. So use your fingernail, right? Your fingernail will not deflect. So no matter how hard you push in, it won't deflect. So if you're using this, you see how much pushing we can get in there? All right. So just a little quick tip or trick. Don't use the meaty part of your finger. All right. Use the fingernail. It doesn't move. And if you shouldn't be digging hard enough to draw a line that you're marking up your carving either. Now, again, we don't want this guy super smiley. I want to come from halfway in between this flat spot and the flat spot we created there. So halfway to me is about right there. So I'm going to come in and go halfway like that. Again, not rocket science, but from here to here, about right here is halfway. And then I'm going to look at it. That looks okay to me. I don't care if my smile line matches or not. All right. So what I want to do is I'm going to come, I've got my smile line. I don't want to change anything on the outside of the nose. So that's where I'm going to land this tip of this knife. I want to come and just clip off halfway in between my nose. And I want to come just about a 1/16 of an inch up, right like that, right? And then we're going to come in here and just touch it out, right like that. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to come where our blade's about halfway in between here and our line. And I'm going to come about a 1/16 of an inch up. And I'm just going to clip that out, right like so. Not much. It's not much at all, okay? But now looking at it from that angle, I don't like my profile, but we got tons of wood right here to get that profile back. Don't hang up on that. We're on the bottom of the nose. Now, I'm going to get a V tool, and it doesn't matter which V tool you get, whether you've got a flex cut, whatever, Henry Taylor, Stubai, Swiss made, doesn't matter. Okay. What matters is the side of your nose. If you like the side of your nose, then your nose is correct. I don't want to come in here with this V tool and carve like this, because then what you're going to do, the deeper you go, the more it's going to look like that nose is glued on the top of the face. that nose tucks back into the cheeks. Okay. So instead, I'm going to follow that angle right there. You see there's no line or no gap. And I'm just going to slightly raise it because I don't want this blade to cut the side of my nose and dig something up, but I don't want to carve like this either, right? So we're going to come way over here on that angle, and I don't even care if I go all the way down here to the bottom, doesn't matter to me whatsoever. And you should be able to come up and it come out into the scoop. Now don't get here and follow it around, okay? Same way here. Now I know that one side of this carved differently than the other, but I got lucky there, okay? So I got lucky right there. So don't carve super hard because you may get into some grain direction. Now, those of you who like to get very technical, let me move this light out of the way. There we go. You see how this one's a little bit lower than that one? That don't matter. Nobody's face matches, so don't get hung up on silly stuff. What I do want to do is right above that. Now, you're going to hear me say about halfway and stuff like that. I just guesstimate a lot of stuff. I don't get hung up on the face is 5 eyes wide and the nose is this in conjunction with that, because at the end of the day, I want to do caricature carving. What I do want to do is I don't want the nose to be here and I don't want an ear to be there. Okay. So that's the only really things that I worry about. Now, when we're coming back down here to pencils, I just want to establish about where the bridge of my nose could be, not should be, could be. All right. And I'm going to say the bridge of my nose is right there somewhere. I'm going to take a bigger gouge than I think I need. This happens to be I think that's an 11. Let me get a 9. I want a 9. I don't want an 11. I do want a 9. And I've got one here somewhere, maybe, I promise, possibly. Here it is. It's right in front of me. So what I want to do is I want to use this blade. Now, anybody that don't like guns can think about something else, but I use this blade, and I look at it in terms of a gun. I want to sight it in. So if I'm coming here and I'm going to try to get over here at an angle, and hopefully I don't wash you out, but you see this blade that's going to be on this side, right? I want to aim above this curve right here. I want to come up about half the distance to where it starts scooping into the nose, and I'm going to push straight in, but I'm going to be at the angle. Watch it come into play. That's too much. Right there's where I want to be. You see where I've established the bridge of my nose? Again, if you're looking at it here, it's wrong. If you're going it this way, it's wrong. But again, straight in from the nose, again, halfway up right there. And again, right there. You see where it's lining up? Now, I can't push this here because if I do, I'm going to hit the camera, okay? I just want to give you the angles of what I'm doing when I do it. All right, so again, let me do it down here out of the way so the camera's not in the way. I'm lining it up, and now look, if I want to go deeper, I can turn it. I don't, I can't twist it this way, something's going to break, but I can turn it and go until that blade hits right on the side of that nostril. And when I move it out, it looks just like that. Now, the hard part, this isn't hard. The hard part is now coming over here and getting it perfect, because you know how everything has to be perfect, right? No, it doesn't, because let me show you what I do from here on out. I just go in there, and we actually got pretty close. Now, let's say that I would have went and made a mistake and done this. All right. So we got in a hurry, and now this one's lower, right? It doesn't matter. Our face does not match. People ask me all the time, hey, when you're practicing expression, it's like, I don't practice expression. What I do is work with the mistakes that I make, which adds expression. And I'm being 100% truthful when I say that. All I did was pop those straight down with a knife and took them off. Okay. So now that this one is a little bit lower, right? I want to over exaggerate that now and push this nostril up. I'm also going to recalibrate, and I'm going to show you a mustache and a face all in one fell swoop here. If you're doing a mustache, you want to come over from the nose and you want to come in there and do one of these, because now you see that mouth comes off, or that mustache comes off of the mouth, and it makes a hunk of wood up here, which turns into your mustache. All right. If you're doing a mouth, that cut comes way down here. Now, a lot of us will take that triangle out and we'll take it out just like that every time. And then we'll try to come in here and put a mustache. What that ends up doing is it ends up making your upper lip a weaker upper lip. And now when you put that big mustache on there, your cowboy looks kind of like, what's going on there? And if you're looking at a face that you've done with a mustache and something doesn't look right, I can almost bet you came way down here and then you started attacking the mustache and that upper lip looks puny. But you see how now we've got a mouth? Now, when I'm doing the mouth thing, and I already did it right there without explaining it, when you're doing a mouth, I start out with 3 planes. So think about biting into a sandwich, okay? So when you're biting into a sandwich, you don't pull a flat hunk of sandwich out, it's curved. So go ahead and establish those curves. Now, we want this original line, and if you need to get your Post-it note back out, you can, but we should have these lines here and here that we didn't take off. If you want to establish those back, like so, with your Post-it note, I love Post-it notes. Actually, there's a carver. I used Post-it notes so long or so much on one video, or like a year's worth of videos, that there was a carver who sent me a pack of Post-it notes as a Christmas gift. And I thought it was quite comical, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm not telling anybody to go out and buy me some Post-it notes. I'm just saying that that's how much I use Post-it notes. I love them. So that's going to be the bottom of his hair.